Of the 1,200,000,000 people on the African continent, 200 million are aged 15 to 24. It is the largest number of young people in the world. However, they represent 60% of the unemployed, and the World Bank confirms these figures. In a recent report, it argues that most of these young people find work in the informal sector, which is often poorly paid and does not guarantee job security or the possibility of upgrading their skills. This situation is exacerbated by the increasing demographics of the African population, which is likely to increase pressure on countries in terms of job creation, but also health and education. Aware of this problem, African heads of state adopted a roadmap in January 2017 at their summit in Addis Ababa to realize the theme of the year of the African Union, taking full advantage of the demographic dividend in investing in youth, a decision and a political commitment that has had an effect on many young people. It is important for all the UN stakeholders and all the partners to be able to deal with the issue of youth and to ensure that real questions are being conducted to try and solve the problems that affect young people on the continent.
Number of young people is unprecedented. We've never had over 60% of young people. So that makes it even more important as a network, because then there are so many youth networks, but the one that's more relevant currently is the one that deals with population and development, because we are now looking at how do we reap the full benefits of having such a huge youthful population, so that when you go and then a lot of younger people start depending on you, are you able to take care of them, or are you now going to also be a dependent and then, you know, going into negative outcomes? So that is one. And then Hope for Future Generations has started a Ghanaian youth network called the Future Generations Movement. Now, this Ghanaian youth network is mainly interested in looking at reproductive health issues. There is still a very high rate of teenage pregnancy in Ghana. And you can imagine that if we have a very large number of young people, then it starts from reproduction. If a girl is 14 and she gives birth to another child, how is she able to take care of this child? Is she able to properly invest in the child's education, because she herself would drop out of school?
Je pense que c'est avant tout une chance.
Above all, I think that this is an opportunity for our country, but also for Africa to be able to choose, to be able to identify the useful tools that will enable us to lead the fight against underdevelopment, but also against conflicts, not only in my country, but throughout Africa. For the youth, we shall never say it is enough. Youth is today the motor of development. Youth is also the strength of a country, and to take advantage of this youth, to reverse the curve of underdevelopment, I think there is no better way than that.
And it was the same logic that prevailed in the organization of Pan-African Workshop for High-Level Advocacy on issues related to youth. The initiative was taken by the UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund in West and Central Africa.
Les jeunes doivent montrer un meilleur sens d'organisation.
Young people need to show a better sense of organization, but they also have to go in the direction of rupture that is necessary to review their own way of working, their way of coordinating their actions, their ways of engaging in dialogue with the national authorities, but also with the international community. We know that this youth has the capacity, this youth has the potential, and this youth knows where it wants to go. So we must together accompany them in their choice, but they must show leadership to clearly define the projects of societies to which they want to succeed, but above all to set up concrete acts that are coherent, and that this youth is really a youth of the rupture, a youth that will build the Africa of 2063.
Et cette jeunesse doit être la jeunesse qui va construire l'Afrique de 2063.
After drawing up the roadmap for the African Union Commission to capture the demographic dividend, the UNFPA undertook to strengthen the capacities of young African leaders and their networks in view of establishing their own action plan. I think the fact that political leaders have engaged in capturing the demographic dividend is a real asset because we cannot take ownership of something we don't know. This will enable us as young people to know the importance of the demographic dividend so that we can participate in the capture. Now, in relation to our expectations, we have to make the roadmap a reality that we can move forward to have that Africa we so do want. We must be able to participate in the processes from the beginning to the end so that by 2030 or 2063, in relation to the agenda of the United Nations and that of the African Union, we can say that these young people have participated in the capture of the demographic dividend and that this is a beneficial thing for all of us.
We have focused on the demographic dividend, on entrepreneurship, and on the employability of young people. We have had fairly some rewarding debates and very clear proposals to take action. I can name a few: the creation of an observatory for youth employment at the national level, at the regional level, advocacy for more funding for young companies, and then on education. We have planned some activities on the national and regional levels through student associations to exchange best practices. On health, we talked about a health and safety center for young people. And finally, for good governance, which is a transversal element, because without it, we cannot aspire to see the unemployment rate lowered. We cannot aspire to see this youth better integrate, be more comprehensive. We cannot aspire to have better health for young people.
After 2 days of dialogue, the youth networks developed an action plan to support interventions in support of the 4 pillars of the African Union roadmap for the capture of the demographic dividend.
Généralement, on essaie de dire un peu, les chefs d'État doivent faire ceci, les États doivent faire cela.
Generally, we often say that it is the heads of state who have to do this, who must do that, etc. But for this meeting, we make commitments on concrete actions that we are able to achieve, but also promote at the national level and regional level. Innovation is the best coordination because we can have networks, but if there is no coordination, nothing works, and we have the chance to bring together young leaders from different countries who have mastered their needs in terms of what they want to accomplish. This is new to us. The other innovation is using social networks wisely to promote what young people want.
La promotion de ce que veulent les jeunes.
Most important thing after this is that after we develop our work plan, we need to make it work. And I think then it puts the responsibility of us as young people to be accountable to ourselves and say that for the things that we have written down and said we will finish by this time, we should have finished. So, because we are the same people who would get into government in the next God knows how many years. So if I am complaining about how my government is behaving and I'm doing the same now, then there's a big problem. So I think the accountability will be measured by the time we end this conference.
The Youth Network Action Plan, which clarifies the role and responsibility of youth in the continent's economic growth and inclusive sustainable development, was presented at the 18th session of the RCM Africa, the Regional Coordination Mechanism for Africa, a meeting to explore how the United Nations system and the African Union can contribute to the advancement of Africa's development agenda.
Aujourd'hui, ce problème, nous devons le prendre à bras le corps, tout partenariat confondu, secteur privé, secteur public.
Today, we need to tackle the issue with every partnership involved, from the private sector, public sector, government to the civil society. And in an integral and coherent way, we should be able to find out how to assist our leaders. That's what we are trying to do at the ADB. Earlier, I talked about the Youth Employment Program for Africa, and it is an ambitious program because we want to create 25 million jobs for young people in the coming decade and try to reach 50 million young people in terms of skills to fill so that they are more present in the labor market.
Disons, de compétences à remplir pour qu'ils soient, disons, encore plus sur le marché de l'emploi.
Je pense qu'il y a un renouveau depuis que l'Union africaine.
I think that there has been a renewal since the African Union has put at the center of its reflection the issue of youth, with the Charter of Youth, which was elaborated in 2006, with the Decade of Employment of the Young People, which was launched in 2009, and this year with the issue of demographic dividend. Therefore, I feel a rather active thrill on this question. But that is not enough, and this approach is not new, and one of the messages that we launched, and this message echoed during the discussion, is that we must move beyond rhetoric to concrete action. I think it's an issue that has been overstudied. We have to take action, and if we do not take action, we will still be on the beaten track.
On restera dans les sentiers battus.
D'un point de vue conceptuel, je pense que nous avons fait des avancées significatives.
From a conceptual point of view, I think we have made significant strides, and from a political point of view, we have also made extraordinary progress in making sure today that the issue of the demographic dividend and everywhere at the level of the international and continental agenda is being dealt with. But as I often say, it is not for the first time in Africa that we speak about the issue of positioning capital. What we have not often done well is that when the path is traced, how to stay on that path and undertake specific actions that will enable changes in the things we want to know. Voluntarism is one thing, but the discipline to stay on the line, to put resources to work together is what we have to do the most, and do it better if we want to move towards the demographic dividend in Africa and in the south of Sahara.
Si nous voulons aller vers la capture du dividende démographique en Afrique au sud du Sahara.
The Youth Conference on Democratic Leadership and Dividend and the 18th session of the MCR Africa will undoubtedly contribute to a better understanding of the theme of the year of the African Union and the implementation of the Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Programme to 2030. The recommendations of these two conferences will be brought to the heads of state and government of the African Union at their July 2017 summit in Addis Ababa, which will also mark the operationalization of the Pan-African Demographic Dividend Roadmap.